What's up, everybody? Eric here from That's Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in this evening. This is actually my second go at this. I actually did do this live yesterday, but of course the sound was horrible and I did not know about it until after I was done recording and I went to go put the podcast together and it sounded horrible. So that is why we are a day late here, and I'm recording now on Friday night at 7 o'clock. Hopefully people can come in for the stream. If you are listening to this as a podcast, you can head over to YouTube to the That's Wrestling channel, because I do all these recordings live pretty much. So if you go over there, click the bell, it will let you know when I am going live and any planned streams and whatnot, so you can join in the fun in the chat and all that fun stuff. So head over there. If you are watching this on YouTube, you'd like to get it as a podcast, you can search for it in all your favorite podcast apps. And if you can't find it in your favorite podcast app, shoot me an email and let me know, eric@thatswrestling.com, so I can get it submitted to that particular podcast. If you still can't get it, you can head over to thatswrestling.com, pick up the RSS feed over there. Also, I am looking for co-hosts for this show, so if you're interested in being a co-host for AEW or New Japan, or even for both, or if you want to just be a fill-in co-host when I don't have anybody else lined up, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com, and we can get talking about that. So I believe that's it for announcements, and let's get to the show. We are talking about AEW Dynamite for January 15th, 2020. Man, I can't believe it's 2020. I'm probably not going to believe it's 2020 until it's 2021 anyways. So sadly, the show starts off with a graphic that Rocky Johnson has passed away. He is the father of The Rock, but of course he was a very big in-demand wrestler back in his day in the 60s and 70s, so sad to see him go. I believe Meltzer said that the year date was wrong. They had it as 1944, but he believes he was born in 1941. I did not check that out, but it seems he might be a few years older than they thought he was, so you'd either be 70, 78, something like that, or 75. One of the two. So I guess he was sick for a while recently, and then he passed away. I believe it was on Wednesday when he actually did pass away. But this episode was named Bash at the Beach, and I think they should have been a little more cognizant of what they were going to after talking about wrestlers who have recently passed away, because the first shot right after that was a woman in a bikini sitting up on a lifeguard chair. So that was probably not the best transition. They should have just gone straight to the commentary desk and then gone to the shot later if they wanted that particular shot, because they had the graphic, and JR did mention, I think 3 other people have passed away in the past week or so. La Parka or LA Park passed away. I don't know which one. The original one? I don't know which one. One of them, the one who got injured back in November, passed away this past week as well. And then there are a couple old timers that were way before my time, so I did not know who they were. And I forgot, but I forgot to write them down. But they should have been a little more cognizant of not going to the woman in a bikini right after talking about such serious things. Anyways, the show starts off. There's no pyro. There's no intro music. Everybody's already standing in the ring for this match. It is a number 1 contenders match for the AEW tag titles. It is going to be a fatal 4-way between the Young Bucks, Best Friends, Omega and Hangman Page, and Santana and Ortiz. So it was a fatal 4-way between them. Of course, why wasn't this an elimination match? It would have made more sense, though, given the story that they developed in it. I guess it had to be a fatal 4-way. Also, why are there no DQs in a fatal 4-way? It's a simple enough thing that if somebody gets DQ'd, you just throw that team out of the match, and then it's down to a triple threat or whatever. I never understood why you can't have a DQ. You should be able to DQ them and just throw that team is now disqualified from the match, and the match continues on with the other participants. Not that hard, and I have no idea why they continue to use the stupid rule of if it's more than a one-on-one, either teams or even just singles, why it's automatically a no DQ match. That's stupid, and the participants are stupid by why would they bother tagging? Obviously, you have to be the legal man to get a pin, but why bother even standing on the outside? Might as well just destroy everybody, do whatever you want, go get some chairs. Like, these guys are dumb if they're not grabbing weapons. It's no DQ. Grab some freaking weapons. So that just makes no sense. Disqualifications should exist, and if a team commits an act that would be a disqualifying act, then you throw that team out. It's not hard. I don't know why they have to go the stupid rules and in comprehensible rules that WWE rules. They should nix that. One thing I did notice, Santana and Ortiz were not announced as Proud and Powerful, so it looks like they have abandoned that name, though one or both of them on Twitter still have Proud and Powerful in their signature, so I guess they haven't gotten the message, but Justin Roberts did not announce or even mention Proud and Powerful. Commentary did not say that name either, so looks like it's gone. Anyways, so we have in this match, we have the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, and Hangman Page. So we have the Elite and the guy who is kind of in and out with the Elite. So they're in opposite corners. Nick and Brett end up starting it off. Nick then goes to tag in Page. Page gets in the ring. Eventually, there's a meeting of Omega and Matt Jackson. They shake hands as a show of respect to each other, and then right before when they start to lock up, Santana and Ortiz run in and break that all up, so we don't really get the Omega Matt Jackson wrestling each other. There's definitely a storyline going on here between the members of the Elite. Hangman is not very vested in participating with this. Later on, there's some really good double team from Santana and Ortiz, which I have not seen much Santana and Ortiz other than AEW. So this was a really nice kind of double team sequence here. And I'm very impressed with what they've been doing. At one point, Hangman and Omega are on the outside. They're asking for a tag, and Matt Jackson is one of the ones in the ring who is the legal man. He goes over to them. He looks at Adam Page and then thinks about it and then tags Kenny Omega in. So there is some strife among the group playing in here. Omega and Hangman have some really good double team. They do a You Can't Escape. Kenny drops Trent. Hangman then hits a running shooting star press. Omega hits a moonsault, and then Hangman goes up to the top rope, but instead of doing the moonsault into the ring on Trent, he does it to the outside, and all the other guys who are outside on the floor. So he gets his moonsault to the floor spot in. There's a bunch of dives, and Trent suplexes Matt off the top rope to the floor onto a pile of guys. And then there's this massive spot where all 8 guys are in the ring, and they're basically paired up 4x4. So you have the Elite plus Hangman on one side, and then you have best friend Santana Ortiz on the other. And they're all locked into like a suplex position. They're trying to suplex the other team, and then Orange Cassidy makes his way in, and he becomes the 5th man on the other team, and they suplex the other 4. I don't remember how the ref was distracted on this one, but he was. I don't remember how, though. Trent and Chucky T hit strong 0 on Omega, but the Young Bucks end up breaking up that pin, and then the Bucks have a super kick party on a whole bunch of people, but they decide not to super kick Hangman when it comes where they would normally kick their opponent. Hangman forces himself into the match later on by tagging Matt, and at this point, Chuck E. T is the other legal man. Chuck E. T kind of throws Matt towards the ropes where Hangman is. Hangman low bridges, and Matt goes tumbling to the outside, and then Omega hits a V-trigger on Chuck E. T, and then Omega and Hangman hit the combo of the buckshot V-trigger on on Chuck E. T, and Hangman gets the pin and pick up the win. So we have Omega and Hangman. They are going on to face SCU for the AEW tag titles next week on the Jericho Cruise edition of Dynamite. So that should be very interesting. There was a bit of a disagreement between the members of the Elite. Matt was like, well, why did you do that to me, to Hangman and whatnot? But then they do all smooth it over. Kenny is kind of in there playing peacemaker. You can't hear anything what they're saying. It's not mic'd up or anything, but you can kind of tell from what's going on that Omega's just trying to explain, hey, we're all here to win the match, and that's, sometimes you got your friends, or sometimes you gotta knock them out as well, and it's no hard feelings. It's just, it's business. One of us, somebody's got to win, and tonight it was us. He kind of smoothed things over. That's kind of what it appeared just by his body language and everything. Matt and Hangman shake hands, so it seems like it was smoothed over. When Omega and Hangman are leaving, Hangman grabs a beer from a audience member like he did last week, and he's drinking it while he's going up the ramp, and Kenny's trying to stop him. He grabs his beer and hands it off to a lady in the crowd, actually. Of course, Hangman's not very happy with this. He walks down the ramp and grabs another beer from a fan, and he continues on. So it's definitely going to be a slow burn here. Hangman has definitely had these problems with the Elite for a while now. We're going on at least a month and a half. I think it was early December when the strife was kind of starting to perk up a bit. And when he left the Elite on being the Elite, and it was mentioned in passing on Dynamite. But now it is very interesting that Omega and Hangman, even though there's a bit of a chasm between them, that they're still successful as a tag team, and I think they've won about 4 in a row now as a tag team, and again, they're going for the titles next week, and I think it's possible that they could put the titles on Omega and Hangman, and then we have this story of like the reluctant tag team. Omega doesn't seem reluctant to be tagging with Hangman Page, but Hangman seems to be reluctant in participating with anybody with the Elite, and it seems like he feels like he has been forced into this relationship just because the bookers have teamed them up so much because they know they were friends, and obviously now there's kind of the fallout, but since they've been winning so much, it only made sense, winning 4 in a row at this point, that they had to work their way up the rankings, so they're going to get the title shot. So if they put it on Omega and Hangman, then you do have the story of you have the reluctant teammates, but they're still successful, and then you can play out the story between Hangman and the Elite. Does Hangman just straight up turn on the Elite eventually, and then it all goes goes bad between all of them? Does the Elite then kind of draw Hangman back into the fold and help him get over whatever he's doing, because he's having the this drinking issue that he seems to have now? Will he get recruited by the Dark Order, as they've shown interest in him? Maybe he will be recruited by the Dark Order and he will be an infiltrator of the Elite or something along those lines. That's another possibility. So I think there's a lot of different ways they could go, and I don't have a good sense on where they're going to go, because the logical, telegraphed move is that there's just a falling out between Hangman and the Elite. But there could also be a very good story, a nice redemption story, if you will, of Hangman's in kind of this self-destructive mode at the moment, and the Elite help him out of that and pull him back into the fold. I mean, that's a very viable storyline I think they could go with, and then they could just put the Elite back together, and then they could continue on their path. I think it's a very viable storyline, and then you have the kind of the out of not out of left field, but the slightly out of the box storylines of he goes to the Dark Order just straight out, or he joins the Dark Order in secret and is an infiltrator into the Elite. And then you could, even at that point, if that happens, then you could continue on the story that I was just saying, that the Elite help him and bring him out of the Dark Order and back into the Elite fold. So you could have a couple different redemption stories with Hangman Page. I think ultimately they have to do a redemption story if he turns heel and gets into the self-destructive pattern or anything, to not be completely distasteful about the issues that he's facing. There needs to be a redemption of him and that he can come back. You don't want to head down this road of being super distasteful with his what it appears to be a drinking problem at this point. The good thing about him is that, you know, he's not a known like substance abuser, so he's just playing this role. It's not as distasteful as, you know, WCW doing alcohol-related angles or drug-related angles with, you know, Scott Hall or TNA doing it with Jeff Hardy, or really anybody playing on somebody's legitimate substance abuse issues. So I think this is okay because he's playing a character. I think we all understand that, and that the guy in real life does not have this problem, so it's not as distasteful as some of the other playing off of some real life problems people have had and drawing light to them, or even making fun of them in some sort of way. So I think it's possible, and there's a lot of different directions this whole storyline can go, and I just laid out quite a lot of them, and I'm looking forward to see how they do this. I think they can do it more tastefully than has been done in the past in WWF, WCW, TNA, all those things dealing with substance abuse, because it's a serious issue, and you don't want to make it a joke. Even though it is professional wrestling, but you can do this stuff without making it a complete joke. Next up, we had Cody. He comes out to do a promo. He's dressed just like he's come off the set of Miami Vice, because they are in Miami. As I mentioned earlier, this was considered the Bash at the Beach show, but there wasn't a whole lot to say as such. The graphics had, you know, some Bash at the Beach elements, but for the most part, the set was pretty much the same. There's just some sand spread out about, and there's a little bit of set dressing. There's a giant beach ball and some fake palm trees and stuff like this. And then the lady with the in the bikini on the lifeguard chair. But for the most part, it was just regular. It was just a regular Dynamite. It's not like they built this up to be a giant card. So Cody comes down. He's talking about how the audience has wanted this match. Arn Anderson told him that, and Cody was just pompous enough in his own head to ask MJF what it would take to get this match. So I think this is how they are getting out of the situation of people asking, why does MJF even think he has the stroke to be able to demand such stipulations from Cody? And Cody here saying that, well, he was pompous enough to ask MJF for some sort of, you know, what it would take, that he put that out there. He's going to stick to his word. So it's not AEW that is giving MJF the power. It's Cody sticking to his word that he would give MJF a opening to request his stipulation. So I think that's how they get out of that. Cody asked the graphic guy to put up the stipulations, and he mentions the last one is that he will have to face Wardlow in a steel cage. He says that MJF's strategy around this one that he believes is that he will get softened up by Wardlow ahead of their match at Revolution. And Cody starts sowing some seeds of dissension here between Wardlow and MJF, because he says Wardlow's going to be debuting for AEW at this match, and MJF should be afraid that if the audience sees him in action, that they will realize that instead of carrying MJF's bags, MJF should be carrying Wardlow's bags. So he's kind of sowing some dissension in here to try to playing a little bit of mind games to show that Wardlow, you really don't need to be MJF's henchman. He doesn't have anything that you can't just take for yourself anyways. MJF, Cody says that MJF is mistaken if he thinks being whipped on TV will be the worst thing that can come of this rivalry. He says that in the third stipulation is that he cannot touch MJF, but he says that's all right because he's living rent-free in MJF's head right now. And he says that MJF is holding on to what old-timers are saying about him, that he is an old-school heel and that less is more with MJF. But Cody says that he's not old school. He's just lazy. And less is more for MJF because MJF is incapable of more. And then he goes on to accept the stipulations laid out by MJF. And then he goes on to say that since this match is happening, he is a failure as a mentor, but there's one more lesson that he's going to teach MJF and that other Rhodes men have taught over the years is that this match is not MJF's story. This whole feud is not MJF's story. He is just a chapter in Cody's story, and that he will be giving MJF his own goddamn scar. So, again, great promo. There were some other commentators who thought this promo was a little disjointed. I thought it was fine, and some people read into words differently, but I just explained how I read into what he was saying. It is what it is, and this is going to be interesting. So that cage match is scheduled for February 19th in Atlanta. So we are over a month away before that happens, because today is the 17th, and this show was actually for the 15th. So we are well over a month away before that even happens, and it's 10 days before Revolution, which is happening on the 29th. So we will see how it goes. Next up, there is a quick Joey Janela video promo. He says that in 2020 is a new year. He starts off with a clean slate, but the first thing that happens is that his ex-girlfriend comes up and punches him right in the balls, and that he has told her many times that he just wants nothing to do with her. He doesn't care if she's Kip Sabian's side piece or not. And then he says he has something to prove, and that next week he is facing Rey Fenix. I am not sure if they messed this up because from what I've heard, Joey Janela versus Rey Fenix was filmed for Dark, and they didn't even mention that it was going to be on Dark. He just said next week. So that would assume that it's going to be on Dynamite, but it was filmed for Dark. So I doubt they're going to do it on Dark and then Dynamite the next night. So this is clearly a misstep here, and they should have mentioned AEW Dark, but of course they did not. They just said next week, not explaining that it was going to be on Dark and not Dynamite. Next up, we have the worst segment on this show. Once again, goes to Brandi Rhodes being involved. And this is what was supposed to be Awesome Kong and Mel versus Kris Statlander and Hikaru Shida is now Brandi Rhodes and Mel versus Hikaru Shida and Kris Statlander. God, please no. This is the absolute worst. Every week, Brandi Rhodes has the worst segment on Dynamite. Somebody just needs to stand up in the booking meetings. The Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and Tony Khan just need to have the balls to say, hey, Cody, I know this is your wife, but this Nightmare Collective is crap, and we need to get rid of it. Somebody just needs to step up to the plate, because the crowd was completely dead in this match, and it was so bad. So Awesome Kong, unfortunately, I believe she was injured or was sick, and that's why she couldn't make it. But this match went so bad. Luther comes out with them, of course, with Brandi and Mel, and Kris Statlander gets into the ring first, but then when Hikaru Shida is coming down to the ring, Luther gets between her and the ring while she is up on the ramp. But of course, she comes to the ring with a kendo stick all the time, so she lays into Luther a few times with the kendo stick. Meanwhile, Kris Statlander is already getting jumped in the ring by Brandi and Mel, and then, of course, Shida ends up getting into the ring to break that up. Shida at one point gave Mel a Hurricane Rana, but Mel took it so horribly. It was like watching her fall over in slow motion. It was pretty bad. She rolled out of the ring, and then one of the most disappointing things that I saw was from Kris Statlander. She was up on the apron. Mel was down on the floor. She does this back kick, and she still slaps her leg, but she missed by like 2 feet. It wasn't even in the ballpark. It was so bad. And she then right after that goes for this moonsault to the floor, kind of like a parallel to the apron moonsault. She barely makes it off the edge of the apron, and maybe her hand might have grazed Mel, but Mel took it like she had got landed on for the moonsault. It was horrible. It would have been better if she had missed and Mel didn't even sell it, and then they recovered from there, but Mel just took the flop. She just like instinctively did it, even though she wasn't even hit. Like I said, the crowd was completely dead for this. It was silent. Brandi eventually gets tagged in after Mel is has been beating Shida down pretty good. And Shida pretty much gets worked over for quite a while. She gets worked over through the commercial break. Shida eventually hits a high knee and sends Mel to the outside. Statlander gets tagged in. Brandi tries to flee at this point, but Mel isn't there. She's on the outside. Statlander hits her with a high kick that looked good, a discus lariat that looked good, and it looked sort of like a Falcon Arrow. I'm not 100% sure what it was. I didn't go back and look, but I think it was like a Falcon Arrow. And she pins Brandi, but Mel ends up breaking up that pin. Eventually, Statlander will hit the Big Bang Theory on Mel and pick up the win there. But oh my God, this is so horrible. After this, Brandi was like pissed off at Mel. She was completely mad at her, like yelling at her on the outside. I hope this is a way to cause dissension already in the Nightmare Collective, and they can break up and we can call it a day on this. But they need to figure out how to get out of this Nightmare Collective thing really quickly. Next up, we have a Dark Order video. Of course, it's right after the Nightmare Collective. Great. We have the guy who has been in like the infomercials, that he's not a wrestler or anything. We haven't seen him in front of the crowd ever, I believe. And he is talking to a guy off camera who is in a disguised voice, which is, I'm assuming he is the Exalted One, as they're calling him. Anyways, the guy's basically giving a presentation to the Exalted One. He's talking about Michael Nakazawa, how he has expressed curiosity in the inner circle, into the Dark Order, and the Exalted One asks about Kenny Omega, and the guy says that Kenny Omega's circle of trust is small, but maybe they can get to him through Michael Nakazawa. They talk about Brandon Cutler, that he has a strong alliance to the Elite, but he needs to be shown that the Dark Order can provide him the support that he needs, and the Elite can't. Adam Page, they go on and say that the Elite had high hopes for him, but he's never been more distant, and they think that he could be the next big acquisition for the Dark Order. They continue on and say they want to dismantle the Elite and show that they never had as much power as the Dark Order does. And then that was the end of it. But the thing that ruined this whole video, Excalibur acknowledged the video right after it was over. This is the biggest downfall of these. These videos have been good. I've liked them. The problem is they should not be acknowledged by the commentators, and they should not be acknowledged by the wrestlers who weren't there. This should be just like on Lucha Underground. They had all their narrative video packages. The commentators either were legitimately in the dark and were never given a script or shown any of the narrative video, which is a good way to do it. So just basically blind the commentators from this story, blind the wrestlers from this story, never talk about anything that shows up in these videos. Because this video is basically, it's filmed as a complete narrative structure. It is portrayed like there isn't a camera there, and it's just like any other movie, and the audience, us, we get to see inside this meeting between the Dark Order and this recruiter guy, I guess you can call him. The audience is privy to that information, and the audience should be the only ones privy to this information. The wrestlers should have no idea. The commentators should have no idea, because that's exactly what... There's no reason why the Dark Order would put out a video to the public for the wrestlers and the commentators to see about their recruiting aspirations and practices. Right here, they gave away that, well, they think if they can get Nakazawa, they can get Kenny Omega. Well, now Kenny Omega knows this. Why would Kenny Omega then allow Michael Nakazawa to either join the Dark Order? And at this point, Kenny Omega can protect Michael Nakazawa from the Dark Order because he knows this. Same with Brandon Cutler. Why aren't the Young Bucks? The Young Bucks can protect Brandon Cutler from the Dark Order now because they release this information that assumedly everybody now knows. It should have been only the audience that knew this. The wrestlers shouldn't have known it. The commentators should have known it. That is how you do this type of video. If you want to make narrative videos, I am 100% in favor of that happening. I loved how Lucha Underground did that stuff. The commentators were completely oblivious to what was going on outside of the ring and outside of the arena. But here, this was just piped in, and the commentators know exactly what's going on. Makes no sense. I love the narrative videos. The commentators need to be part of the illusion that that is a narrative, and they have no acknowledgement of it. They know none of the content, and it's never referenced by the commentators or the wrestlers. That is how you do narrative inside of a wrestling TV show. You pretend that those people in the arena and the wrestlers, commentators, never saw it. They know nothing about it because their characters, as announcers or as wrestlers, shouldn't know that information, and they don't, as far as the story goes. But now you do know that the commentators do know it, which means they saw it, which means all the wrestlers saw it. It's just backwards, and they should not be doing it this way. I really hope they fix that, because I am fully on board with narrative structured videos. Next up is Sammy Guevara versus Jon Moxley. The winner of this match will continue on to face the winner of Pac and Darby Allin coming up later in this show, and those two winners will meet in a number one contenders match next week on the Jericho Cruise. So Sammy starts it off really fast. He attacks Moxley right away. This match was way more competitive than it should have been. Sammy gets in quite a lot of good offense, and Sammy hits like this double stomp that accidentally turns into like a double knee on the apron. It looked kind of like a happy accident, I guess. Sammy hits the Spanish fly off the top rope, hits a running knee, and then basically hits like a flip over GTS. That's the best way I could describe it. He had him in a torture rack, but then he kind of flipped him over like you were doing a Death Valley driver, and then kneed Moxley in the face instead of letting him go to the floor, instead of doing like a reverse Death Valley driver. yeah, so that was very interesting. Moxley kicks out of that, of course. Sammy goes up to the top rope to do a backflip. Moxley ends up catching him, putting on a rear naked choke, and Sammy taps immediately at this point. So I like that they have incorporated a submission into Moxley's repertoire. I mean, John Moxley in real life does work out and practice. I believe he does Muay Thai or he does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I think Jiu-Jitsu. So I mean, he lives in Vegas, and there's a lot of training for MMA out there. So he does some MMA training as well, legitimately. So it's cool to see that he's going to be using like the rear naked choke for a submission. Good to have that he has a submission, and then he also has the paradigm shift as a finisher as well. After the match, Jericho's music hits, but then the lights go out. The trope that they continue to use that I can't understand. Why does Jericho have the say-so of who turns on and off the lights? I think they need to address that a little bit. I can see when Cody does it because he's a executive vice president, so he can go to the lighting guy and say, hey, shut off the lights, and then in 10 seconds turn them back on, because he kind of has that pull because he's part of management. I guess Jericho, you could explain it. He's the champion, so, you do what the champion says kind of a thing. But that's the best you could do it. Anyway, Santana, Ortiz, Hager, and Jericho appear in the ring when the lights turn on. Moxley is staring them down, and then Moxley just charges them. But, of course, he gets beaten down. Jericho ends up whipping Moxley with the AEW title belt. Haven't seen that happen for quite a while. Actually, use the title belt as a whipping instead of a weight belt or an actual belt. Hager then gives him a running knee to the balls, so he uses his Bellator MMA finisher. Santana and Ortiz hold Moxley back. Sammy gets in some shots for a little payback from what happened for tapping him out. Jericho unscrews a spike off of his spiked jacket and then stabs Moxley in the face with it. They're saying you stabbed him in the eye or whatever. Of course, it looked more like he got him in the forehead, but there wasn't really like any blood or anything. Moxley's just holding his eyes. The trainers come down. They put like towels and stuff over his eyes or anything. And then they go to commercial. During the commercial break, there was an inset. Jericho speaks into the camera. He says he's going to say this slowly, and that's what happens to you when you turn down the inner circle. Or I guess what he said was, that's what happens to you when you turn down an offer of a lifetime, you son of a bitch. And that was kind of it. They head backstage, and then it cuts to Jen Decker. She is catching up with Jericho. Jericho says that what happened to Moxley is not Jericho's fault. It is not the Inner Circle's fault. It is Moxley's fault for turning down the Inner Circle, and says that next week he's going to continue his embarrassment of the Jurassic Express and of Jungle Boy. So he's pulling that in. And next week it's going to be Jericho, Santana, and Ortiz versus the Jurassic Express on the Jericho Cruise. So that should be pretty interesting. Next up, we had QT Marshall, Dustin Rhodes, and DDP. Yes, the 63-year-old, I think, DDP. Versus MJF, Butcher, and Blade. JR accidentally called MJF Matthew Jacob Freeman instead of Maxwell. So that I had a good little chuckle with. MJF was wearing a shirt that said, I banged Dallas's daughter. So that's a reference to last week when he said that's what he was going to do. He was going to get one of his diamond daughters and they were going to bang. And MJF and DDP look like they're going to start it off, but of course MJF tags out right away. And then as soon as DDP decides to tag out as well, QT Marshall comes in. MJF tags himself back in so he can face QT Marshall. MJF got in a few, heel tactics here. At one point, he punches Dustin behind the ref's back with wearing the big old Dynamite diamond ring. Also, when Dustin is on the outside, the bunny gives him a slap, and Wardlow drops him with a kick on the outside. Eventually, DDP gets tagged in with MJF. DDP gives a diamond cutter to the Butcher, who's trying to come in to kind of save MJF, I guess. MJF blocks the view of the ref and hits a back kick low blow to DDP. He kind of, DDP that is, kind of waddles back towards his corner, tags in Dustin. Dustin ends up hitting a destroyer on MJF. QT Marshall hits his cartwheel, barely make it over the top rope, dive to the outside. And then DDP hits a dive of his own off the top rope to the floor. And then while that is getting sorted out, MJF rolls QT Marshall back into the ring and then rolls him up, grabbing a handful of trunks and picks up the 3. So with a handful of trunks, cheating his way to a victory against QT Marshall. And that is pretty much it for that match. Jen Decker is backstage with SCU, and really before they can say much about their reaction to facing Omega and Hangman next week, Hangman kind of just interrupts and says he's going to kick their ass. He is like drunk and kind of stumbling a bit. He spills his drink on Christopher Daniels. They have some words. Hangman's like, I'm going to kick all your asses and everything. And Omega has to run in and smooth things over. He pulls Hangman back from SCU. He's smoothing things over with SCU. He says next week he wants a gentleman's match. He has nothing against SCU or anything and all that. And he smooths things over and pulls Hangman away. Then they announced the cage match with Cody and Wardlow will be in Atlanta on the 19th, which I already talked about. And then we have the final match of the evening, which is Pac versus Darby Allin. The winner of this match will go on to face Jon Moxley for a number 1 contendership match next week. They start off really quick. Pac ends up flipping out of Darby's springboard arm drag that he likes to do, but right as he kicks up, Darby ends up hitting with a drop kick, so Darby didn't even pause when that happened. He continued on. Darby hits a series of shotgun drop kicks and then 2 insane dives. He goes for a Rana off the ring apron with Pac standing on the floor. Pac ends up catching him and basically swinging him into the ring steps. And then Pac pulls the ring steps away from the ring. He gets on top of the ring steps with Darby Allin, and then he power bombs Darby Allin onto the ring steps while he himself is already standing on top of the ring steps. So it's not like he was standing on the floor and then did a power bomb to the ring steps. He had the full height of himself, the full power bomb onto the ring steps. It looked like it hurt really bad. And Darby Allin was cut up a bit on his arm and on his back because he did kind of hit the edge of the ring stairs where the cutout is for the ring post, where it, kind of shores up against that. So he was bleeding from the back of his arm and his back a bit. There's a "You sick bastard" chant from the crowd. Pac carries Allin up to the top rope, and it looks like he's going to do like a super fall away slam. But as he goes back, Allin continues the momentum and basically does a reverse crucifix bomb, which was really awesome. Really cool move. Pac rolls to the outside to try to get some space, but Allin ends up going to the top rope and hits a coffin drop to the floor onto Pac, who's walking around. Pac is made to answer a 10 count. Allin hits his flip over stunner and then hits a code red for a 2 count. Darby goes for a baseball slide drop kick on Pac on the outside, but Pac pulls up the ring skirt and basically traps Allin between the ring skirt and the ring, and he gives him a kick to drop Allin. He throws him back inside, gives him this massive clothesline that turns him inside out. They have like a exchange of pin attempts, and then Darby goes for a springboard coffin drop, kind of like a lion salt, but doing it just with a coffin drop. Pac catches him, gives him basically a snap German suplex out of the air. And then from there, he hits a massive high-angle powerbomb on Allin. Pac then fights Allin off when they're up on the top rope. Pac ends up hitting Black Arrow and picks up the pin. This was a really good match, pretty fun match. Darby Allin taking that bump on the top of the ring stairs looked horrible. And then after the match, Tony Schiavone goes down to the ring to interview Pac. He is saying, he's going to go on to face Moxley next week. And then Pac is like, no, you should be congratulating me as being the number one contender because Moxley is incapacitated and he's not going to be making it to next week. But then Tony says he's hearing something in his earpiece and something's going on backstage. They cut to backstage. Moxley is getting loaded into an ambulance. They close the doors, but of course, Moxley decides, now I'm busting out of here. So he busts out of the ambulance. He has a bandage around his head, holding some cloth over his eye, and he comes out to the top of the ramp, and he says he doesn't care if he's got one eye, if he's completely blind, if he's half dead. He will be there next week because that title shot belongs to him. So he definitely will be facing Pac next week on the Jericho Cruise for the number one contendership. So just like last week, well, unfortunately, not like last week, they didn't mention AEW Dark once. Last week they mentioned it like twice, and pretty heavily that they, go check out AEW Dark. They didn't mention it once again on Dynamite. Why? Why did they not do this? What is going on, guys? You got to do this. One thing that did come out on that day is that AEW has signed an extension on their deal and for more money. TNT is basically going to be paying them $45 million a year for the next 4 years to create Dynamite. So they have basically guaranteed money, $180 million over the next 4 years. And they're also going to put an hour-long show onto one of Turner's networks. It sounds like it's probably going to be AEW Dark is going to be moving off of YouTube onto TNT or True TV or TBS, or who knows. Those haven't been completely fleshed out and hasn't been announced yet. But most likely, it's going to be Dark is going to be off of YouTube and onto one of Turner's networks, which is a good thing. They're already producing it, so they might as well put it on TV. It's not going to cost them any more than it's already costing them. And now, instead of just getting the $400,000 I believe they were getting for production costs for the show, they are now basically getting $900,000 per episode instead of the $400,000. Plus, they get the revenue sharing on the advertisements, which is estimated somewhere around $10 million a year. So it sounds like AEW is going to be profitable very quickly now with this deal because they're going to be making roughly $55 million a year. Obviously, the production costs are now their responsibility, but so they're definitely going to be profitable this year. And now with this guaranteed money and the guaranteed deal for the next 4 years, maybe it might make some free agents think a little harder about going to AEW and maybe turning down some big WWE money, because now it looks like, if they go to AEW now, AEW is going to be around for at least the next 4 years, most likely, given what it is. They also, TNT that is, also has a option to extend it into 2024 as well, so they could get that 5th year. And interestingly enough, how it works out is that WWE's deal with Fox comes up at just about the same time, because they both started I think they both started that same week. So basically, both AEW's deal with TNT and WWE's deal with Fox ends at the same time. So that could be an advantage to TNT, that they won't have to shell out as much money because everybody's going to be bidding to keep WWE, unless something huge happens and AEW starts pulling in like 3 million viewers. You never know what's going to happen over the next 5 years, so that is a possibility. But having the two biggest wrestling shows come up for new deals on the same week is definitely going to be interesting, and there can be the bidding war, not only between the two of them, but the networks on which one do they want, who do they want. Most likely everybody's going to want to bid for WWE first, and then if they don't get it, they might be bidding on AEW. So this could be a good thing or a bad thing. If AEW's deal ran up a year earlier than WWE's, they might be able to get even more money because WWE wouldn't be on the market at that point, and they could see, well, hey, Fox gave $1 billion to WWE for 5 years, so if we get this wrestling, we want wrestling now too, because it's obviously a huge money draw, and AEW could make more money or less. It really depends on how you look. Maybe the bidding war with both of them being on the market at the same time is good, or it's bad. I'm not sure which way it's going to go. Either way, with them pulling in a $180 million deal from TNT in 3 months, basically, from being on TV in, almost 4 months, that is just amazing on how fast they have grown from nothing to now. Also in the press release, it said that they've been averaging 1.2 million viewers when you factor in plus 7-day DVR as well. So, I mean, that's a really strong number for their show, and they've been getting that relatively consistently. Even the week of Thanksgiving, where they did like a $600,000 live, after DVRs, they were back up to like 1.2 million. So they are being really consistent with live plus DVR numbers. So that is good to see, and we'll see going forward how that plays out in the upcoming years. But I think that is all that I have this evening for you guys. If you would like to be a co-host on this show, like I said, I'm looking for a co-host. If you're interested in AEW, New Japan, or both, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com, and we can discuss what you'd like to do. If you're listening to this a podcast, be sure to head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell, and it will alert you when I'm going live and I'm doing these live, so you can join me in the chat. And if I say something wrong, which I'm sure I do often, or you have a question, you can pop that in there, and I can probably answer it while I'm doing the show. So that's good. Get some audience participation here. If you're watching this on YouTube and you'd like to pick this up as a podcast because you want to listen to it on your way to work or whatever on the normally Friday morning, go ahead. You can subscribe. You can find that on all your favorite podcast apps. If you can't find it on your chosen podcast app, send me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. Let me know which one so I can get it submitted and get it on there. If you still can't get it, you can always go to thatswrestling.com, pick up the RSS feed over there. You paste in the address into your favorite podcast app, and it should pick it up without much issue. So I believe that's it. So thanks for watching, everybody. Comment, question, feedback, shoot them over to me, eric@thatswrestling.com, and I will see you next time on That's Wrestling. See you later, guys.